The chair recognizes Mr. Bryant to speak in opposition to the bill.
Gentlemen, I will be brief, but I believe that what we're about to do here is so damaging to the people of our state and to this very small percentage of our society that it's not responsible to sit in one seat and not speak up about it. If you have ever met a family that has a child that is transgender and listen to them with an open mind, tears will come to your eyes. The hardest-hearted person in this room will be moved emotionally to hear their story. And to hear the story, in the case of a family with a child born as a boy, and yet knows somewhere in their heart that they're a girl. And to hear the father say, I wanted my son to be a boy. I wanted him to man up. I wanted him to be macho. I wanted him to be like I am. But from the earliest time, he said, I'm a girl. I don't want boy toys. I want girl toys. I don't want boy clothes. I want girl clothes. Now, this is a mystery. And all you folks that see a great deal of your lives through religion, you know as well as I do, life is a mystery. We can't figure these things out. And people devote their entire lives to studying these kinds of mysteries and trying to figure them out to the extent that somehow they can provide relief to those who are suffering in the midst of these mysteries. Now, we have to keep that in mind as we analyze this. Representative Oliverson is not an expert and doesn't claim to be an expert. He's an anesthesiologist. I have great respect for him, not only his career, but his legislative accomplishments. But he is not an expert in this area. One would have to give their entire career to this area to know about it and to become an expert in this area. And for this family, who we all personally know, real families like this, they deserve to be placed in the hands of experts and not have their lives governed by the political winds that blow us back and forth. You know, that is exactly where we find ourselves tonight. We have access to those experts, and we have access to those experts right now in real time. Not Dr. Oliverson and those that support his point of view who are not experts, but the people that really know the territory. The American Medical Association, the American Osteopathic Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, the American Public Health Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the Pediatric Endocrine Society. All of these say that medically necessary treatments should be made available according to the understanding of the experts for these children. That's who we should be listening to, not to the people who this year are concerned about this issue and next year will be concerned about another issue. What is the first rule of medicine? Do no harm. And yet we're watching harm being done all over the United States as we deal with this temporary political issue. I just ask you to stop and think about what it means. We heard a lot of words about medical irresponsibility a moment ago. To be medically irresponsible is to ignore the experts and to go with the lay people who just have opinions and those who admit that they're not experts, as many of those who are debating this issue tonight. Let's do what is politically responsible. Politically responsible means to be leaders. It means to go home and say, look, this is complicated. I'm not sure what this is all about, but I know this. I don't know as much as all the people on this list right here, whose names I just read to you. They're the ones that know what to do. They're the ones that ought to be making the decisions in this area, not a bunch of folks who are in politics like you and me. I urge you to look into your hearts and to vote against this bill and do the right thing for these little kids and for their mothers and fathers and not deliver any more anguish into their lives. Please vote no.
The chair recognizes Mr. Tinderholt in favor of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. I want to speak on behalf of this bill. I asked for this committee for this bill. I used my seniority pick. I strongly believe that these children need and deserve the mental health attention that they should get to help them through this issue. During the committee hearing, we heard many children who grew up and they wanted to detransition, or they were in the middle of detransition or had finished detransitioning. And they agree that this is child abuse. I think it's important for us in the House to send a message to 30+ million Texans that we care about Texas children. And we believe that these children deserve to get the care that they need, mental health assistance, but that we will protect them from being abused as children and have puberty blockers given to them and have them permanently sterilized so that if they decide later, which many of them do, to detransition, that they can no longer have children. So I stand in front of you tonight in full support. Let's send a message to the millions of Texans that in this building, we will protect Texas children. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Ms. Thury to speak on the bill.
Members, it is out of respect, caring, and friendship for every member of this body that I would like to share my position on this very complex issue. I'm coming from a place of love and compassion and can only hope and pray that it is received in that same spirit. While we can have debates on the best policy approach, I do not believe that any of us in this body actually wants to cause harm to children who are suffering from depression, dysphoria, or any other mental health issues. Over the past 2 years, I have extensively researched this issue and painstakingly reviewed the scientific data in this country and around the globe. I have listened to my constituents, to advocacy groups, and stakeholders both for and against gender modification. As a woman of color, I know what it's like to feel unseen, unheard, and devalued. I have recently been treated that way by some in this process in coming to this vote. That is not what children experiencing gender dysphoria should have to go through. And I believe this debate should never and was never about erasing transgender children. For me, this discussion is about how best to protect and care for these children as they navigate through the challenging journey of finding the best version of themselves. After listening to the debate today, I absolutely believe we should raise the age to 18 for children to receive GnRH analogs, cross-sex hormones, and to undergo potential irreversible body-altering surgeries. I am assured that this position is rooted in sound policy, which supports the mental health, physical development, and overall well-being of minors. Members, in this nation, most all adults have been united in at least one basic premise: that children deserve protections, special protections, and exceptional treatment under the law. As a legislative body in this state, both Democrats and Republicans alike have routinely enacted legislation which shields children from acts which place them at an increased risk of harm. This principle is established in many areas of public health policy, such as restricting the age to 18 for tattoo services in this state, restricting the age to 18 to get a tan at a tanning salon, raising the age to 21 to purchase tobacco, cigarettes, and e-cigarettes. These policies and regulations are in place because we recognize that children should be protected from actions and activities which have harmful health risk or lifelong consequences. This same logic must also apply when approaching the very complex issue of treating gender and body dysphoria in children. As we heard here today, right now in the United States, there is not one universal policy or standard of care on the appropriate age that cross-sex hormones should be administered in children experiencing gender dysphoria. In fact, there is significant divergence amongst both the medical and scientific community. One of the key aspects of this debate is the use of drugs which delay a female child from menstruating, or a biological male child from physically maturing into his adolescence. Puberty is a natural biological process, as it serves a critical role in both the physical and mental development in all human beings. Concerns have been raised that hormonal suppression of puberty may permanently alter a child's neurodevelopment. It is only honest to admit and accept that we do not know of the long-term effects that prescribing GnRH analogs, cross-sex hormones, as young as 8, 9, and 10 years old, of what that will do to children, solely for the purpose of affirming gender dysphoria. What we do know is that these drugs can cause harm to a child's health, including the early onset of osteoporosis, incontinence, increased risk of blood clotting, stroke, and heart attack, infertility, and sterility. Moreover, as we all agree, the decision to undergo body-altering surgery to remove healthy breast tissue in biological females or to remove male genitalia in biological males cannot be reversed. While these surgeries should happen after the age of 18, there is no such law codifying that in Texas without the passage of SB 14. Science has already proven that the frontal lobe section of children's brains are not fully developed under the age of 18. As Democrats, we've espoused this principle many times on the raise the age to 18 for criminal culpability. The data on teenage brain development has shown that because the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe, is responsible for decision-making, planning, and thinking about the consequences of actions, teenagers rely more on another part of the brain, the portion of the brain that unduly influences their emotions, impulses, aggression, and instinctive behavior. Certainly, children as young as 8, 9, or 10 are completely incapable of understanding that these medical treatments may require that they remain patients for the rest of their lives. For example, what are the long-term effects of administering the chemotherapy prostate cancer drug and chemical castration drug known as Lupron to a child who is otherwise physically healthy but is experiencing gender dysphoria? Just last year, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration added a warning to the drugs known as puberty blockers. It indicated that there was a plausible association between puberty blockers and pseudotumor cerebri. This condition occurs when the pressure inside the skull spontaneously increases. This can cause brain swelling, severe headaches, nausea, double vision, and even permanent vision loss, according to the Mayo Clinic. Earlier this year, the American College of Cardiology released a study finding that people with gender dysphoria and taking hormone replacements as part of their affirmation therapy face a substantially increased risk of serious cardiac events, including stroke, heart attack, and pulmonary embolism. There's also literature that suggests that long-term use of estrogen and testosterone in children may cause polycystic ovarian syndrome. Despite talking points to the contrary, the data is inconsistent that the rates of suicide and depression will be improved by administering these hormones. Lastly, several European countries, which were on the forefront of administering this treatment, have reversed course. They are taking a more cautious approach now to the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in minors. Finland now recommends psychotherapy as the first-line treatment for gender dysphoric youth. The Swedish Health Authority no longer offers puberty blockers to minors except in exceptional cases, stating the risk of puberty-suppressing treatment with GnRH analogs and gender-affirming hormonal treatment currently outweighs the possible benefits. Certainly, the topic of gender and body dysphoria in children requires careful consideration, caution, and compassion. Sadly, the discussion has become polarized and politicized. In fact, while many of my constituents encouraged me to vote in favor of this legislation, hostile activists on social media platforms have made horrific, nasty political threats to influence my vote against the bill. These personal and often racist attacks on me as an African American woman are neither productive nor persuasive. Privately, some have shared in confidence that they agree with the bill, but they are too afraid of the retribution. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So it remains my legislative duty and my moral obligation to vote the conscience and core values of my constituency. I will do this today with an open heart and a clear mind. As a thoughtful legislator, mother, woman of faith, and child advocate, I am making a decision to place the safety and well-being of all young people over the comfort of political expediency. It is my core belief and conclusion that we should remain consistent in the premise that children must be given special provisions under the law, as they cannot fully appreciate the long-term consequences of their actions. As such, the best practice should be to raise the age to 18 for gender modification. Moving forward with this prudent policy, we should also ensure that vulnerable children and teenagers have quality access to mental health care that is safe and in a supportive environment. Only by taking a careful, compassionate, and evidence-based approach to this issue can we guarantee that we are doing what is truly in the best interest of our children. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Rosenthal in opposition to the bill. Mr. Tepper, for what purpose?
I'd like to request that Ms. Theory's comments be reduced to writing for the journal.
Members, all the debate and comments on today's legislation has already been reduced to writing and placed in the journal. Mr. Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm going to start out by saying I'm a straight white guy. This is not my experience. But I do have friends, family, constituents that I love and care about, and I've been at this microphone to talk about this issue before. Members, trans rights are human rights. They're human rights. With this bill, this is government, this is big government trampling on the fundamental rights of our constituents with government overreach into their personal lives, interfering with families' most private and personal decisions. Y'all, these are just humans trying to live their lives. They are only seeking their most basic, fundamental right to pursue happiness however they see fit. Y'all have seen the commentary on gender-affirming care we all have in this chamber today. We've been inundated with hyperbolic and alarming messaging using the most egregious and ugly language. We have seen truckloads of false and misleading statements stoking fear and hate. These damaging narratives would have us believe the very worst of each other. Look at your neighbors and the chairs next to you, and it doesn't matter what letter is after our name. There is not a single member of this body that I believe wants to harm children. And the language used around that is beyond egregious. It's horrific. And these lies and misinformation narratives are being repeated over and over and over again in social media circles, shared by email, text messages. We have seen testimony here in this room, in the Capitol. It's been repeated by elected officials on this microphone here today. I have heard over and over, it said today, that studies show 80% of children just given psychological care revert back. That was broadly debunked. I have studies and studies of studies. I would invite the author to actually cite the reference for that, because I have studies that show National Institute of Health, factors leading to detransition among transgender and gender diverse people in the United States. This is peer-reviewed research about research by actual scientists. So listening to scientists and medical researchers, people who make their whole life about this, instead of listening to politicians loosely use facts, loosely use data, loosely use stuff that they heard, all of us have some friends that say, I do my own research, immediately followed by bald-faced mistruths. Members, what we're talking about here is care for kids. We all want our children to have the very best care possible. And although we may disagree on what that looks like and what it is, in a society like ours, most often we defer to families as being the ones to have the best interests of their individual children at heart. These are delicate, difficult, individual, nuanced decisions to be made by families with their faith, with their doctors, with their medical providers, psychologists, psychiatrists, the professionals that work with care and love to provide the best care possible for each individual child. We talk about one size doesn't fit all for 254 counties, one size doesn't fit all for 30 million constituents in our state. Okay, y'all have heard of the American Medical Association. We talked about it a little bit tonight. American Medical Association has over 271,000 members. This is not a small organization. They were founded in 1847. On their website, they claim they are the only medical association that convenes 190 plus state and specialty medical societies. And this is a quote from the American Medical Association. The AMA opposes the dangerous intrusion of government into the practice of medicine and the criminalization of healthcare decision-making. Gender-affirming care is medically necessary, evidence-based care by professionals that improves the physical and mental health of transgender and gender-diverse people. In 2021, the AMA delivered a letter to the National Governors Association urging state governors to oppose legislation just like this. The letter cited evidence demonstrating that foregoing gender-affirming care can have tragic consequences for transgender individuals who face increased risk of anxiety, stress, substance abuse, and suicide. The majority of transgender and diverse gender patients reported improved mental health and lower rates of suicide after receipt of gender-affirming care. The bill and the false negative and rhetoric around it politicizes kids who are often fragile and at a delicate juncture in their life. It's wrong and immoral to take these delicate decisions away from the families. Members, time and again, when legislators seek to contravene the experts, especially in complex fields of study, it never ends well, and neither will this. Members, our Constitution and our House rules require us to hold public meetings so that those who wish to be heard can come to their state capitol and testify before us, before decision makers. This is the people's house. It's our responsibility to listen to the people. We do a great disservice to the people when we alter our processes to silence the voices of the citizens of our state. And that is exactly what happened in the committee hearing for the companion bill to this in the House. In what might be an all-time record, over 3,000 Texans came here to the Capitol and registered a position on the bill. 2,917 registered against, 97 registered for. Around 400 people actually registered to testify. We were watching this whole thing from my office. I saw the entire committee hearing. Only a couple of dozen people actually registered to testify for this bill. Do you know how many total were allowed to speak? With over 450 people who registered to testify on this bill, either on, for, or against, roughly 50 people got to speak. And most of them were cherry-picked or preferred testimony, invited testimony. I'm just going to say it again. Trans rights are human rights. When this body seeks to infringe upon the rights and liberties of our citizens, we should at a minimum have the fortitude to face those people and hear them out. I hope you can agree with me when I say, when the government seeks to intrude into our private lives, the government is making an error. It's always wrong. Please vote no on this legislation.
The chair recognizes Mr. Emanuel to speak in opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Many of you know that I have done everything possible to stay off of either one of these mics unless it's about legislation, unless I care about this. And I'm not gonna cry and I'm not gonna make this about me being gay. That's pointless, because this issue is about transgender people and their families, these children and their families making medical decisions. One of my favorite authors, Virginia Woolf, she says, their thoughts are our prison, their eyes our cage. This legislation is creating a prison and encaging these people in them. They are not asking you to stand with them at a parade. They are not asking you to change your religion. They are not asking you to believe what they believe. They are asking you to let them have their parental rights. That's all they're asking. I'm an asthmatic child, and my parents had to give me medicine that used to make me shake so profusely it would keep me up at night. And as I got older, there was new medicine that didn't make me shake so much at night. Medicine is ever evolving just as people are ever evolving. I'm going to read to you what a transgender child parent sent to me when I asked them about bone scars. And I'm going to say this. We've heard facts, and this is the difference right now in this world that's wrong today. Everybody has someone they go to for their facts. But just as I cannot tell a woman what it is to be a woman, and you cannot tell me what it is to be black, you cannot tell a transgender child or their families what they have to take care of their children with. Bone scar scans are standard to ensure that this does not happen. This child, said parents, they have several monitors to make sure they are not losing bone density. If puberty blockers are being administered that young, it would be for precocious puberty. That wouldn't be used for gender care, and no one starts hormones that early. I asked if children are starting this at 8 or 10 years old. The highest risk is when you are on blockers for long periods of times without hormones, awaiting more answers from my physician to give you for best practice care protocol. Imagine someone coming into your home telling you they can raise your child better than you. Imagine at one point, I'm going to invoke this person. He's probably going to go crazy today, but I'm going to do it. Former Representative Jonathan Stickland stood at this mic one day and said, members, there's going to be something that every one of you are going to love and be passionate about one day, and you don't want someone to take that from you. Well, for these people, that's their children. So I don't care if you listen to Fox News or MSNBC. I am asking you to listen to these families. I don't care about me. I don't care about any of you. I care about these children. I care about your children, and I care about your children not being told what they can take, what they can watch. Everybody in here knows I'm a daddy's boy. When I see a father and see him with his children, I will cry. My father stood up for me more times than I can ever think of. A man who raised me in the military, woke me up to make sure I did my homework at 2 o'clock in the morning, went through my room to make sure that I wasn't doing drugs. I had a father. These children have parents who are taking them to therapy. They are taking them to doctors. They are not getting all, oh my God, my child said I saw a television show and now they think they're a girl. That is not how this works. I have a step aunt. Even though they are divorced, she was transgender. She is transgender in her 60s. She transitioned in the late 80s. She's still alive. And I guarantee you, any of you, if you want to see a picture of her, because I've shown them, she's beautiful. And the reason that people feel sometimes that they have to digress and that they need to go backwards is because of societal pressures telling them that they are not okay. One thing that I have said, and I know, is that my God loves me, and I'm going to tell you why. My family makes fun of me because I pray over dessert. I thank God for water. I thank God that I can use the restroom because that is a blessing. That is a blessing from my Creator. I was raised in a Black Baptist church. But I do not go to anyone's church and ask them to change what they will believe. If you don't believe in same-sex marriage, I'm okay with that. If you don't agree with transgender, that's okay. I'm okay with that. But again, remember, do you want someone to come into your home, to your church, into your job, into your law practice and tell you, you can't do that because I don't agree with it? And I won't say this member, but there's one member in here who I have great respect for, and they say all the time, why are we letting outside influences influence this body? We will not send gambling to them. We will not send tax reform to the voters, but we will darn sure tell them what they can and cannot do. We were elected to go through the facts, to listen to each other, to be diplomatic. This is a body of diplomacy. This is not a third world country where we talk about each other on social media and call each other pedophiles and perverts and demons and allow it to continue. This is a body that is supposed to put everything aside when we walk through those doors and the R's and the D's fall. And many of you know I take a lot of stuff for voting for the things I believe in. And it's not always Democratic stuff, and you know it. I live in an area where so many people get cancer, but it's the best environment for them. And we try to make the best of it. And sometimes I can't vote as green as I would like to, but it's always my district first. I am asking you, I am imploring you to be magnanimous with your vote, to give these families their right to just raise their children so that when they grow up, they know that they had a parent who loved them. Because this is not an easy situation. Everyone in here would do something different. None of us in here would do the same thing. None of us in here like the same foods. And I'm going to end again with one of my favorite authors who I love. Virginia Woolf says, every human being has a say in the matter of their prescription. Even the lowest patient has some say. Therefore, by she defines her humanity. Let us define our humanity by being humble. Pride comes before the fall. I understand for some of you there is a scorecard. And I know it may not work for some people. And if God gives me the breath, if God gives me the width, I will cancel every vacation for anyone who needs my help. I don't care what you have an R or a D behind your name. I am asking you to vote for these people's parental rights. I am not asking you to vote for me. I'm not asking you to vote for anything. I am asking you to just remember that these children love their parents and their parents love them as much as I know you love your children and your families. Thank you for your time.
The chair recognizes Ms. Jones of Harris in opposition to the bill.
Mr. Speaker, members, I will rubber stamp what Representative Rosenthal said, which is trans rights are human rights. It is hard, it is scary to figure out who you are as a person who's, I don't know, fits into what is normal for society, whatever that means. But I am telling you as a member of the GLBT community, and I know for a fact that trans people are treated way worse than gay people. And I know I was so afraid of coming out, even though everyone sees this strong person. I was in the closet for years because I was afraid of judgment. But nobody tried to regulate what medicine I can take or what medicine I can give to my child because I'm a parent. And I know that people don't choose to be ostracized. People don't choose to be different when you know everybody looks down on you. So when a child figures out who they are, we should support them. No one chooses. As a former athlete, I've had a ton of surgeries. Surgeries are not fun, but sometimes they are necessary. No one chooses to take hormones and be different or get surgeries because it's a fad. It's not so easy to know what's male and female, despite what people said. And I didn't understand that until I had a friend who was intersex. And what she explained to me is that her grandmother was intersex. She was born intersex. She had both sexual organs, or at least the doctors thought so. So they let her parents choose. They chose wrong. Caused her a lot of problems. She was just like my client that I spoke about earlier, who got in the girl line, who got in the girl line, even though people thought that she was a boy. When you are a parent, there's no book on how to parent. You could have 3 different kids and 3 different things work with them. So you've got to figure out the parenting style that works best for that child. And as parents, we want to be really good parents. We want to support our children. If our children come to us and they want to be something, or there's something that we don't want for them to be, like maybe I'm a lawyer and I want my child to be a lawyer. No, we should let our children be whatever it is they are, and we should support them. I believe it's absolutely offensive of government to tell a parent how to parent their children. And yes, we're talking about parental rights, but we're also talking about children's rights as well. Who are we to tell these children that they don't know who they are? It's just not right. I sit on the Public Health Committee. I was there for that March 27th hearing. We knew in advance that the odds were stacked against us. We knew the committee was going to end at 12 midnight. We also knew that there was an overwhelming number of people who came to speak against the bill. But it was just really curious how, if you just looked at who testified, that you actually thought that there were just as many for as against people. We created a fiction, although government is supposed to represent everyone. I also find it curious that we're disregarding U.S. science. When in Texas, we think Texas is its own country, and we don't listen to anybody else. And we surely don't listen to people across the pond or overseas, but now we're clinging to science in other countries very far away. I'm black, if you can't tell, for 57 years. And in my community, we tend to be not real understanding of GOP people. But I learned about the unique challenges of transgender people when I was a city council member in Houston, and I had an openly trans woman working in my office. And I know when I met Josephine, she didn't have money to be able to afford surgery. She was suicidal because everyone was telling her she was a man when she was a woman. And they tried to force her to go to a certain restroom. And it was just horrible. They just found reasons to pick on her. And what I hadn't figured out is why in the LGBT community, generally, in the trans community specifically, why we worry about what they're doing when they're in their homes by themselves with whoever it is they want to be. We don't micromanage heterosexuals. Why are we micromanaging or trying to micromanage people in the LGBT community, especially trans people? We should be kind. We should be tolerant. God doesn't make everybody the same. It's also interesting to me. I practice law. There's 3 standards. There's a preponderance, there's clear and convincing, and there's beyond a reasonable doubt. So in order to lock somebody up, it's got to be beyond a reasonable doubt. In order to take a child away from their parent, it's clear and convincing. It's more than just a preponderance. Because this state and this nation recognize how important it is for parents to have a right to be parents to their children. So I'm just trying to figure out why we are just so adamant about interfering with a parent-child relationship. I don't understand that. If any of you in here are parents, and I know a lot of you are, I want for you to try to walk in the shoes of a parent who has a transgender child. Your child comes home and tells you something because everybody wants a straight kid and they want him to be tall and handsome and have a good job, and they're not what you want for them to be. Are you gonna terrorize your child to make them be who you want them to be? Or are you gonna try to figure out how to be the best support for your child? And are you gonna advocate for your child? So yeah, it's about parental rights, but it's also about children's rights. And I'll end on this. I think you judge a society not how we treat the best of us. We judge a society by how we treat the least, the last, and the lost of us. And transgendered people in this country and across the world are treated horribly. They're murdered at a higher rate because we don't believe in their humanity. They are people just like we are people. They bleed just like we bleed. And they deserve our love and our support and our tolerance. And so I'm speaking against this bill because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to have the courage to vote for children to determine who they are, and for parents to be as supportive of their children as they can. And just because they are trans does not mean that they are not entitled to all the rights and appurtenances that U.S. citizens deserve. And I'm urging you to please vote against this bill. Thank you.